This is probably going to be the most personal video that I ever make. At the end of my TEDx talk, you might have heard me mention that I had an interview with my brother. That interview was the first time my brother and I had sat face to face and had an open and honest conversation about our mental health. I'm not going to lie to you, that conversation was probably the scariest and most difficult conversation that I think I've ever had, and probably what he's ever had also. But I would like to share that conversation with you today. And I'm going to commentate over parts of that to give you some context. You might be thinking, why did you record that interview in the first place? Well, the reason why I did is because I wanted to use that video recording to help me prepare for my TEDx talk. We never intended to share this publicly. But after going back and watching the video, we thought there was some valuable parts within that might bring value to someone. So that's why I'm making this. The one thing that I want you to get from this is to have those open, honest and vulnerable conversations with the people that you love. Because yes, they're really scary at first, but they can be massively beneficial. So here goes. I'll be completely honest with you here. Because I blame myself for you, pretty much.
Why?
Because, did you not know this? Because when I kicked that football in your face on a trampoline. Because when I was 14 years old, I had no idea.
But you weren't angry then.
No, let me explain. When I was 14, I had no idea what depression was. No. I had no idea what mental health was.
Well, I understand that.
You were always full of life, always happy, and all of a sudden, to me, it's almost like I kick a football in your face on a trampoline one day. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then everything changed.
Yeah.
So that's the first time my brother had realised that I blamed myself for making him depressed, and he was shocked by that. He didn't really understand that. So this is what I mean. Imagine if we had this conversation a week or two after that event, or if I had that conversation with my mum. She would have explained to me that depression is an illness and it's not something you can control and it's not your fault. And that would have, I feel like I probably wouldn't have been aggressive if I'd known that, because for me, we had this one incident when I kicked the football at him and then he went off, tried to take his own life. And then obviously as a 14-year-old kid who knew nothing about depression or mental health, I blame myself because everything changed after that. Just wish that was clear at the time.
And can I ask you, I don't know if you want to answer this, but what goes through your mind when you think about I want to go? Like, is there any rational thought process?
Well,
or is that almost like this is the only outcome that I can have?
I think it's a bit of both. I think you see it as an outlet.
An outlet to stop the pain?
Yeah. But I think the rationale is, how can death be as bad as life at the moment? There's no way it can be as bad as what it is. It can't get any worse. So if I die, that's going to go away. No one knows what happens when you die. Do you go to heaven? Do you get reincarnated? No one knows what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost becomes the unknown becomes less scary than the reality. Do you think about others? No. Do you think about the people you're leaving? No.
Yeah.
Is it a selfish move? I don't think it is.
You don't think rationally about that?
But, I don't think people who... Okay, my suicide attempts failed. But I don't think...
How serious were you about them?
For a couple of them I was very serious. Yeah.
So you can just even tell by watching this interview that I still don't know how to fully absorb that, question, because I feel like the most difficult thing with this is actually going back to it so many years later. You almost, when you live your life and you go past that period, you almost forget about that journey. So when you're talking about it again, it does bring up ideas, and it brings up your old memories. And that was probably the most difficult thing about my whole TEDx journey. It was having to articulate a very difficult part, and that's something that I'd never done before. It's something which I had just put in a little box and kind of shoved it away and didn't really ever want to get back to it. But this is really interesting for me to learn now, because I understand why my brother was like he was, whereas in the past I didn't. And the reason why I'm doing this, and the reason why I wanted to speak openly about it, is just because I know there could be someone who's going through a similar journey who might need to know that actually there is another option. There is greater times ahead, and winter never lasts forever.
I could see no end to any of it.
Neither could I.
And
So isn't that a massive lesson in itself?
And that was the reason that I thought,
Because it wasn't just like 6-month blip, it was a year and a half.
fucking longer.
It was a long time.
Yeah, it's about a year and a half. Wasn't it?
And like, you just can't see an end to that. You're just like, I'm just going to be like this. Hence why I just wrote my life off at the age of 16 years old.
Oh, even watching this interview, it's making me feel like numb. Like, I was just trying to think about how I feel, and I feel really, really quite sad, really. It's a really difficult thing to go back to. And I also think that's one of the main issues about speaking about this topic, is just because, well, and the reason why people don't speak about it is because it can bring back some quite challenging times, and it can make you feel quite lonely. But then we just have to think about the people who we could help by doing this. That's the main thing.
Do you think you're defined by your worst actions?
No. It's a one-off. Nothing you can do about it at the time.
I love that simplicity. It's so true.
How would you define yourself now? I went back to this question to start, but I feel like you might be in a better situation to define that now.
How would I define myself now? I don't know. Pretty happy.
So this was the moment that I referred to as part of my TEDx talk when I ended it. And this is the last thing that he said. And this was the most amazing thing I've ever heard my brother say, is because I had never really heard that he would define, well, I would never have thought that back then that he would have defined himself as happy. So just watch how I react to this.
I think that's enough. I think that's all you need. That's brilliant. I'm super proud of you. I feel like you have so much more than you think you have. And I think, has this been beneficial to you?
Has now. I was a bit nervous.
I was nervous too, because I have not spoken to you about this.
We've never spoken about it
at all.
Ever?
How amazing is it when you let go?
Yeah, it is a weight off the shoulders.
And doesn't it empower you when you talk about it? Like,
yeah.
This could have been one of the difficult things we've ever done.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've never been ashamed of my mental health. I would never be ashamed of that.
Based on this, do you think you'd be more empowered to tell more people about it?
Yeah.
Because I just see there's so many people out there who don't have the same view on it as we do, but especially you do. And there's people, and this is the whole reason why I'm doing this, because there'll be people who have no idea what's going on. They have no idea where the future's going to lead them to, and there's a huge stigma around mental health and depression. But from yourself, from someone who was never good at school, someone who went through this very dark period in a time where
there was hardly any positivity in your life at all, and then go through that and turn it around to do something that you're passionate about, be in a very strong relationship, and even just sit here and say that you're happy is incredible. I feel like there are so many people out there who would do anything just to sit there and go, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
And to me, that's what success is. I would describe you as successful because of that. Have you ever classified yourself as successful?
No.
Well, you should do more often, because I think what you've done is just absolutely incredible. And I am super, super excited to share your story and our story and get it out to the big wide world. It's been so much fun. That's it, right there. It's probably the most difficult and challenging conversation I'll ever have in my life. And I hope it's brought some value to you in some sort. And the amount of things that I learned just by sitting down and having a face-to-face conversation with my brother is truly remarkable. And yes, it was scary. I was petrified. Even asking him if I could have a conversation, I was scared because I had no idea how he would react to it. But I feel like we both craved for years to just be honest with each other and to be vulnerable and just to talk about that experience. I just wish it happened 8 years earlier. Because if it did, I wouldn't have blamed myself for my brother's depression, and I would have realised that there were other variables involved that made him like he was. And I also would have realised what my brother was going through and the thoughts that he was thinking at the time. So if we had known that then, a lot of the issues and the situations that we dealt with would have been resolved. So I encourage you to have those conversations sooner rather than later, because you never know what might come as a result of that. The only thing I would say is make sure the other person is comfortable in speaking, and make sure that you create a very safe environment to have those conversations. The other thing that I want to say is have the confidence to raise awareness of issues that you're passionate about. Because after my TEDx talk, I started to doubt myself, and I started saying, who am I to be speaking about mental health? I have no qualifications in this, I've never done it before, and the only thing I have to go off is my experiences, and that was 8 years ago. And that changed when I had a conversation with a guy called Mark LaRouste. And we were having dinner one evening, and I expressed my doubts, my fears about it, and he just looked at me and went, Tom, you're ridiculous. You have to see issues like the Death Star. And if you haven't seen Star Wars, the Death Star is this massive ship, right? And you have to see issues like the Death Star. And the only way you can defeat that Death Star is if you attack it from multiple angles, with multiple people from different perspectives. So he said, yes, you might not be an academic, but you have an experience that might resonate with someone, and you have knowledge that might bring value to someone. So that is what has encouraged me to speak about this. So if you have an issue that you're passionate about, don't be afraid, speak up, because we need to hear your voice. And it doesn't have to be mental health, it could be anything. Because I just feel like the more we talk, the better things are going to be. That's it from me.